Derby look like they are going to be slapped with a big old points deduction. Now, Wayne Rooney has stuck with them so far. He's been there throughout, and he has sort of dismissed anything really. He said, we can get through it. We're fighters. And he managed to keep them up last season, which was, considering how few goals they scored, was absolutely remarkable. But it seems no matter what you throw at Derby at the moment, Wayne Rooney's not budging.
No, yeah, he's done a tremendous job so far, I think, in the sense of keeping a team motivated, keeping a team stimulated and running through brick walls for him and doing whatever it takes. I think it's fair to say this is not a particularly good Derby team whatsoever. I think, they've been downsizing year on year. They've obviously not been able to do any business in the transfer market. For impact players, they've been sort of cobbling around for waifs and strays, trying to make it, trying to put a team out that's competitive. And I think Rooney's kept them competitive. I think we said in the podcast last season that relegation or a relegation battle was probably in the post for Derby when you do look back at, how basically they overachieved for a couple of seasons with playoff finishes. And, Rooney just did the job that was required in the end. I think he possibly, he came in and got results early on. So, it lifts spirits and you think you're expecting a lot more. But, you see in the fullness of time how things have played out now. I think just staying up last season was an achievement.
And what type of manager, you can go back and listen to the full Wayne Rooney podcast that we did. I think it was around about March off the top of my head. But at the start, Mike, we talked about how, he came in and it was a young side and he was like, right, let's keep things tight. There was a succession of clean sheets, but there was not enough going forward. There were real problems. He's spoken about this several times in his interviews and he's always asked about it for obvious reasons. And he says it's something we're working on. I've told them that we need to improve our output. We need to improve our decision-making in the final third. Have you noticed a sort of change in the way he's managed Derby over the past 6 to 9 months? Because all of this going on in the background, he must be constantly having to juggle a lot of things at the same time.
I think it's possibly more than anything, I've seen a reinforcement of his identity. And I think where at the beginning, you didn't really know what he stood for as a manager and what his identity was or what his philosophy might be. I think we're seeing the characteristics that made him such a great player coming out. I think your first impressions are that you've got this player that's played all of his career at Manchester United and, at Everton either side, but in the Premier League, in the top half of the Premier League, winning trophies, winning titles, European Cup finals and stuff like that. And you're thinking, well, what's he really going to know and understand about the Championship? But by the same token, I think we can all identify with Wayne Rooney as a person, as a manager, that if he had not had the talent that he had, he would have had a full-on League Two career. He wouldn't have, there would have been nothing stopping him, his passion for the game and his love for the game, mucking in at whatever level was required to get him to just have a career in football. He very much would have happily been a journeyman, I think. But he's very much got these old school values that are coming to the fore in his management. So he's not out of place in relegation battles. He's not out of place outside of the Premier League. He's not out of place with the job that he's being asked to do now in terms of administration, because he's someone who just very much stays in the moment and gets on with it. Really gets his hands dirty and gets stuck in. And it's all about motivation. It's all about what comes from within. It's not about his ability. It's not about players' individual ability. I don't think he's someone that looks at his players and gets frustrated at what they can't do. He just he tries to get the inner motivation and got the best out of himself. He tries to get the best out of them.
It tells us a lot, doesn't it, about his personality and his willingness to see a job through and his dedication to everything that he throws himself at. Because Wayne Rooney, one of the best players to play in the Premier League of the last 20 years, a massive name, could be doing anything, and he's got enough money to be doing whatever he likes, quite frankly. But he's here at Derby. Now, again, we're only dealing with hearsay here, but reportedly paid for a lot of the overnight stays on away trips, and some of the coaches and players' meals when they're at away games. Again, we don't know that for sure, but that has been strongly suggested. This is not a man who does things by halves.
Yeah, well, he works in the realm of emotions. He's not about what's logical or, we're talking about somebody who it's all about drive and determination and perseverance and not giving up. And I always think what I'm beginning to see more and more of him, I know he's got a passion for boxing. And I've been making a connection recently with certain managers who share, who go about the job in the same way as him, who see things in the same light. All sharing a passion for boxing, and it's about the values of boxing, the romance around, never quitting and getting yourself up off the canvas and all of these kinds of cliches around it. Even this weekend, Joey Barton said after a 3-1 home defeat for Bristol Rovers, you've never lost until you quit. And I think that's the attitude that's, so evident in Rooney, is that you just don't quit. You never throw in the towel on any situation. You keep going. And it's your determination and persistence gets you your rewards. He's not got necessarily some idea or some vision that he wants to create. He just knows that when I stick at something and I really see it through to the end, it gives me this real sense of reward. It gives me this real sense of pleasure that I've achieved something. So he just keeps going on. He keeps this level of determination and seeing things through to the end. And I think it's what defines him. And I think it's exactly what Derby need right now. And, I don't think really there's too many managers they could have who are better for them right now than Wayne Rooney.
On to this problem then, this huge deduction that is staring them in the face. Now, it's a competitive championship division anyway, and Derby have made a pretty remarkable start, haven't they? Beating Stoke at the weekend. I think that's 10 points, isn't it now, that they find themselves on. Comfortably mid-table, a side that were widely predicted to be bottom and probably pointless by this stage. And he has got them fighting. So few players, as you touched on at the start, in that squad. 1 or 2 injuries could be absolutely devastating, but everyone's there. Players like Jason Knight coming back as well from injury as well will be key. But this is a huge ask, isn't it? This is a huge ask. And Rooney has said, look, it's my job to restore dignity at the club. I spoke to the players. We just have to be professional. We know we're in a difficult position. We know there'll be a points deduction coming our way, but we'll have to do our job. Derby is a massive club, and I have to get the players playing and make it attractive for potential investors to come into my football club. Now, he doesn't own this football club. None of his money is wrapped up in this, but he's almost taking this onto his shoulders as if the whole thing is his own problem to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. He's accepting total responsibility for the motivational side and what is going to follow. And I don't think he's going to tolerate excuses. I think he's just going to be so single-minded on the football side. I think he's just going to try and push as much as he possibly can to the sides, anything that might be seen as a distraction in terms of what the administrators might try to do to limit his capabilities. I think he might even try, in a non-selfish way, but try to play on his own reputation in terms of sweet-talking administrators or trying to get people to just cut him a bit of slack and let him get on with the job. Because I think he accepts that his brand as Wayne Rooney is probably the biggest thing going for Derby right now in terms of trying to get favours in, whether it's through loan deals or whatever might be coming down the road. And nobody really knows yet. It's funnily enough, actually, I've been reading Neil Warnock's autobiography recently, talking about his administration at Crystal Palace, and you wouldn't believe the things that go on behind the scenes. Now, this can go one or two ways. Wayne Rooney can get sidetracked too much, which he'll be trying not to do, but sidetracked too much by not the politics, but the executive side of things. And if he gets his attention and it pulled away too much from the football, then Derby in big trouble, because it's not in his skill set anyway to really worry about the logical problems or try to deal with logistics. He just needs to be left alone with the dressing room and to motivate a dressing room to just go out and give the very best that they can week in, week out. And so long as Rooney's allowed to just concentrate on that and isn't just thrown constant curveballs like on a Friday night or a Saturday morning, he's already done his preparation and then he's got to change again. But so long as he can focus on the football, he'll keep the players in the moment. He won't have the players worrying about what might be coming, what might be around the corner. There'll be no worrying about the future. There'll be no dwelling on bad performances or past results. It's very much in the moment. It's that single-minded determination. We just keep going, we never quit. And that's all you can really ask in the situation that Derby are in.
And one important factor, I think, in all this as well. And this is regardless of what happens this season, especially if Derby find themselves in League One next season, which is looking increasingly likely at this stage. But one thing Wayne Rooney seems to, I've noticed, to started to try and do is get the fans on side a little bit more. That we're all in this together, because he's talked about how the fans were fantastic back in the stadium. He's talked about how the atmosphere could have been hostile against Stoke, but it wasn't. Like when that first goal went in, everybody was right behind it. Now, obviously, there's not going to be the same quota of fans in that stadium than there has been. There's not going to be the same noise, naturally, with everything going on. There's doom and gloom around, the staff around the stadium. But he's talked about, making sure the staff get paid and get everything they need. He's talked about getting the fans on side as well. He clearly realizes the importance of making everyone, I guess, dig in the same direction here, isn't he? Because it's, he's sort of making sure that not just the players are happy, but the staff and the fans. But is this the concern that you have, Mike, that he's taking too much on outside of the football perspective?
Yeah. I think he just understands. I think he can put himself in different people's shoes. I think he can empathise with what the fans are going through right now and what certain individuals behind the scenes, not just the players, the other backroom staff and the, secretarial and stuff like that, people who've had jobs at the club for years. I think he can, he's from a very working class background. He understands, that not everybody has these privileged lives. So I think he understands that this is affecting people in a very real way. I don't think he's necessarily a rallying manager that wants to, we're all in this together kind of thing. But obviously, I think anybody understands that you're going to go a lot further if you try to, get together and stay together, as opposed to have different factions within the club and, any negative sentiment. You stick together, you've got a much better chance. So I think everybody understands that. But I think more than anything, I think he needs to, he's just accepting responsibility for the motivational side. And he knows that the fans have got a part to play in that. I think more than anything this season, I think what we're going to see is Derby become a team that on days when other teams don't fancy it, that's Derby's real opportunity to take points in matches. And I don't think there'll be too many occasions this season where Derby turn up for a game and don't fancy it. It's just one game at a time, completely blanking out what's gone before and what's coming next. It's just one game at a time. And there's going to be, in a 46-game grueling season, there's going to be plenty of occasions where other teams just aren't necessarily right at the best. It's only Derby. Look at where they are in the table. They've got the struggles. And if other teams don't get their motivation right, Derby will have opportunities to pounce. But there's no doubt that on a quality level, a technical level, most teams now at this level are better than Derby.
So you alluded to this before. In fact, you more than alluded to it. I think you actually said it, that Wayne Rooney appears to be the right character for this job. Let's sort of focus on some of his personality types, some of the flow states that he might have, some of the ways he deals with things thrown at him. You don't want managers who walk away from situations. He's certainly not that. You don't want managers who panic at the first sight of a problem. He's definitely not that. And you don't want managers who are so stubborn and so wedded to one particular system or way of playing that actually, when it stops working, there's then a sudden downturn. And again, he doesn't feel like that. So, you'll be able to go into much more detail about this, Mike. But to me, there have been grumblings about him in the past, but at the moment, right at this very moment, he seems like the perfect man in place.
Yeah, well, at the beginning, like I say, one of my initial reservations was about philosophy, was about what's his style of football going to be. That's all kind of front foot stuff when you've got lots of technical ability and different players to work with. And I think now this possibly suits Rooney to be on the back foot, to have full license and permission to play the opposition, not to have to play this free-flowing football, just play the opposition in front of you and adapt from one game to the next. I think he's got loads of real-world experience from his career to understand what tactically a game needs. Only last week, Derby went to West Brom away. West Brom have looked, up to that point, I've looked pretty all-conquering. They've absolutely dominated games so far. We all know what Valerian Ismail's against. 2 games against Derby, though. Derby's gone away to Barnsley last season and away to West Brom, and they've just repeated the same performance. And Rooney basically turned around. The Barnsley away last season, where I think they were on a run of 8 or 9 straight wins at the time. Rooney took Derby there and basically said, right, we're just going to do what they do. We're going to play the same way as they play. Let's press them the way they press us. Let's us play a high line. Let's just make sure that they don't get any opportunities to break free and play any football at any stage either. We'll just make it as horrible for them as it is for us. And got a 0-0 draw. And he said it, straight after the 2-0 defeat at Birmingham on the Friday night. He said, well, you could sense he was relishing the trip to West Brom because he had a clear plan. He knew what he was going to do. It was about what the way the opposition were going to set up. We don't really need technical ability. We don't really need quality for this. We just need to match what they've got. And I can put any 11 players I put out on a pitch, I'll back myself to be as dirty and ugly and as messy as the other team. If that's what it takes to get the result, and that's what I'll put out. And I'll take full responsibility for that because I know that I can get that out of players. So I think we're going to see a lot of occasions this season where it's going to be all about the first goal. It's going to be attritional games. It's going to be about Derby setting up differently from one week to the next to spoil games and to not let the opposition get into any sort of rhythm. And I think it plays to Rooney's strengths.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that game because he did come out and say, well, yeah, we saw what they did at Barnsley earlier in the season and we just did exactly the same and it worked. And they were absolutely under the cosh for the majority of that game, but doesn't matter. You come away with a point. You've got a 0-0 draw out of it against one of the top teams in the division. So, yeah, all credit to him. I'm just going to go slightly off-piste here, Mike. I know your face will probably wrinkle up at the thought of that, but I just want to ask you something that sort of just come into my head. So if Wayne Rooney is relishing this underdog tag and the fact that Derby are not really expected to pick up many points this season, if Derby drop into League One next season, they're going to be up there in the pre-season betting. They're going to be one of those teams, a bit like Sunderland, that everyone wants to take on at that level. And everyone's going to be going, Wayne Rooney managing in League One. Is that potentially going to become a problem for him looking ahead?
I think it's hard I think this is a really hard one to answer because as much as Wayne Rooney doesn't walk away from a fight, and I don't think he will, by definition, he's a manager that every decision he makes is in the moment and he doesn't look too far ahead or get too far ahead. And I think by definition, you make decisions that maybe force your exit at some point because you're not thinking about whether you upset someone, whether you push things a bit too far, or, he might just push these players to breaking point where they're just not good enough and they just can't give what he's asking or, he's just demanding a bit too much in the end. I think it's hard for any manager to stay at beyond the relegation, never mind a relegation where it's everything that Wayne Rooney's been through. So I think it is literally just going to be one game at a time. And I wouldn't say for sure that, whatever happens between now and the end of the season, I wouldn't say that Wayne Rooney is definitely going to be in charge of Derby at the end of the season. But I also don't think Wayne Rooney's going to turn around and say, I can't be doing this anymore. I've had enough. Unless it becomes about what's going on off the pitch and not what's on the pitch. He won't walk away from the fight of getting results and getting a team motivated. And he won't walk away from them players. He'll feel a sense of obligation and loyalty to the players that are there. I don't think he'll just turn his back on them and leave them to fend for themselves. I think he's very much taking this responsibility on his shoulders, but it is one game at a time. And by definition, that means that you do things that aren't necessarily preserving the future so I just can't see a situation where Wayne Rooney's managing Derby in League One next season.
Good stuff. Finally, Mike, then, and thanks for bearing with me there with my curveball. How do you see the rest of this season going? At this stage, we don't know when the points deduction is going to come in, but as you say, it's about taking one game at a time, and surely it's just accumulating as many points as possible and seeing where they can get to, isn't it?
Yeah, there's an interesting narrative here, because, Derby should be in League One now and Wycombe should be in the Championship, I think most neutrals would suggest. But Wickham are now the inspiration for Derby. Gareth Ainsworth's same personality type is not the inspiration for Rooney. I just think the two peas from the same pod in the way that they go about the job. I think the dark arts. I think Rooney will not be shying away from whatever it took for Wickham to get results last season. Wickham were 12 points adrift of safety with only a handful of games to play, and Ainsworth was not giving up at all. Believing in fairy tales as he often talked about. And it got to the final day of the season, and Wickham in the final 2 games of the season could have still mathematically stayed up. It's not going to be over until it's over. I think it's fair to say that Derby are probably going to go down this season, but you just never say never with someone like Rooney in charge. Someone with his emotional state, his emotional flow state, his ability to motivate, never throwing in the towel, staying in the moment, and not. This is all going to come down to the problems are the problems, and they're going to undermine Derby no matter what. What they're not going to do is undermine Wayne Rooney. If Wayne Rooney keeps his focus on the team and that side of things, Wayne Rooney's reaction is not going to be the reason why Derby go down. It's going to be because it was just an impossible job anyway. But, while you've got a manager like him in charge, you've always got a chance.